The Constitution of the United States is the oldest constitution in use in the world, and much of the reason for this is due to the Bill of Rights, which has protected not only the rights of the people, but served as a stopgap against the usurpation of the rest of the Constitution. There's been a long-standing attack against our form of government and our basic documents by an organized group of people, generally known as Marxists, and are represented by the modern socialist communists. They have long targeted the Bill of Rights by attempting to destroy the very spirit of these first 10 amendments to our Constitution. There are even organizations that exist who profess to work to preserve the Bill of Rights, but whose actions are actually designed to destroy them by confusing the very spirit of the Bill of Rights. We will constantly interject this problem into our study as we proceed through the various amendments. We think you'll find it very interesting. Those who've studied the two basic documents of our founding, in other words, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, do not realize that there was a third document, much older, in which much of the Declaration and Constitution were based. That document was the Ten Commandments. Much of the Constitution, with its Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence, while not specifically mentioned, is based on this code of law, and we shall refer to this when appropriate as we proceed through this study. Much of the Bill of Rights is ignored today. Part of the reason for that is that the Bill of Rights is not well understood by many, due to the education most people receive today and have been receiving for several years. It's been inadequate, even distorted when it comes to these amendments. We will give you examples of this as we go along. Another part of the reason is that there's been a systematic campaign to confuse people about the Bill of Rights as part of the Marxist agenda to eliminate any enforcement of these amendments. They have to get rid of them if they are to succeed in producing a socialist state in America. They use the tactics of saying we live in modern times. The Bill of Rights was written centuries ago and needs to be updated. They confuse even the very spirit of why the Bill of Rights was written to begin with. Primarily, they hide the fact that the Bill of Rights was written based on human nature and the nature of governments in general. This nature does not change whether it's the 18th century or the 21st century. It's called human nature because it's the norm and never changes. Therefore, a system of checks and balances needs to be set down as the basic law of the land. Why? Because socialism is a system of control over the individual, not a system of economics. In order to control the individual, you have to eliminate their rights, especially if they're encoded in a document such as the Constitution. Something we need to understand as we begin are the two goals of the socialist communists, which they never deviate from: the establishment of a one-world government to be ruled by them, and the elimination of God from all public life. In this regard, the Declaration of Independence is a problem for them. First, it declares that there is a God and that our rights come from Him, and second, it is a document of independence, a country that stands separate from the rest of the world as a government, not part of a one-world government. We have to understand this because the Declaration came before the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and served as the foundation on which the war for independence was waged, and the subsequent formation of our country. In other words, our founders declared that there was a higher order of things, and it was God, and that the Ten Commandments preceded everything our founders produced. Since our founders were a religious people, everything they did was in that context. This becomes very important relative to the Bill of Rights, not because of what they included, but also what they did not include in the Bill of Rights. For instance, there is no mention of the right to life. This was so ingrained into the beliefs of our people at the time, they had no idea that it would ever become an issue. Had you lived then and said that there would come a day when the idea of eliminating life at the beginning or the end with euthanasia, the idea would not have been accepted. It was too horrible to even contemplate. The Ten Commandments stated that you will not commit murder, and that was it. No argument. There is only one reference to the right of private property in the Bill of Rights, And this was stated in a way that government could not take property without just compensation. In other words, they had to pay for it, as had happened all over the government, under all other governments in general. In other words, kings and potentates and democracies had seized property from people without compensation, just stole it. And the Ten Commandments said you could not steal property from the people. Now, it says, thou shalt not steal, but it doesn't matter whether it's you or whether it's a group of people calling them a government. These are just two examples where the Ten Commandments from God were part of the thinking of the people who formed our government. The Bill of Rights went further and spelled out a number of things that had never been spelled out before, and as stated, served as a bulwark against the infractions of government and the Constitution. After the formation of the United States, the Ten Commandments were often placed on government buildings as a reminder of our foundational thinking. Today, along with the Bill of Rights, the Ten Commandments are under attack and being removed from public buildings. But we can turn all of this around, preserve our wonderful heritage, and this series is part of how we intend to do just that. This series will be available on YouTube and other social media platforms every Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, beginning next week.